What's going on, guys? In this video we're going to be discussing Starmap from Itertools. Now Starmap is actually very similar to map in the sense that you will pass a function to an iterable and the function will be applied to each element of the iterable. However, in the case of Starmap, the element is usually a tuple consisting of multiple elements that will be broken down using the asterisk, as opposed to map, which will not break down the element extracted from the iterable. Now, all of this may sound slightly confusing, but the examples I have should clarify the distinction between Starmap and map. So let's just dive right into the code. The first thing we'll do is, of course, import Starmap from Itertools, and we will create two lists, x and y. And let me just print them out. So we have two lists. Now what we're going to do is to utilize Starmap, we need to put everything into tuples. So Starmap works with iterable full of tuples because you want to feed those tuples into a function. So what I'm going to do is use the zip function, and if I run zip now, or if I run z, you'll see that the 1 and 0, 3 and 2, 5 and 4 have been zipped together, and we have an iterable full of tuples. So this is the format that Starmap works well with. And if you feed this z into Starmap, you'll see a different outcome as opposed to if you feed this z into map. Alright. So the way that Starmap will work is that if you have a function like power, which takes two arguments, 3 and a 2, it will take each of these tuples and it'll feed them into the power. So basically what it will do is it will break apart this tuple and create two different arguments, 1 and 0, and feed it into power. So essentially, if we use power with Starmap and feed it the iterable z, it will take each of these elements, which are tuples, break them apart, and feed them into power. So in this case, power needs two arguments. So what z will do, so what Starmap will do is we'll take the first tuple, the 1 and 0, break them apart into 1 and 0, and feed it into power. Then it will go to the next tuple, 3 and 2, break them apart into two parts, 3 and 2, feed them into power. So essentially, with Starmap, we're able to feed tuples as multiple arguments into a function. Now if I run this, you guys should get a much better understanding of what I'm talking about. Alright, so basically the power function, the way it works is, let me just run this, it will take the 3 or the first element and then it will raise it to the next element. So here we're raising the first element 3 to the power indicated by the second element or the second argument 2. So we'll raise 3 to the second power. In this case above, we'll raise 1 to the 0 power, which is 1, 3 to the second power, which is 9, and 5 to the fourth power, which is 625, and so on. So that is essentially what Starmap does. It will take an iterable full of tuples, and it will break apart each tuple and feed them into the function that you specify. Now doing this with map is problematic, and the main reason that map can't do this is because with Starmap, this 1 and 0 is broken apart to create two different arguments. But with map, map doesn't break apart the tuple, and it feeds the tuple as it is into power. So power is expecting two elements, a 3 and a 2, or in this case, a base number and an exponent number. But with map, it feeds the tuple as it is, so it's only feeding in one number. So if I run this, you'll see we get a type error. Power expects at least two arguments and it only got one because map is not breaking the tuple into two parts. Alright, so let's go down and look at an equivalence in map. So to do what we did with Starmap, which was just feed in power with z, with map you would need to unzip each tuple. So we would have to borrow the lambda function and use x, which is the tuple, and then break apart x into the elements of the tuple and feed it into power. So this will be the equivalent of Starmap. Once again, what we're doing is, since taking each element from z as a tuple, what we need to do is take each tuple and break the tuple apart before we feed it into power. So if I run this, we should get the same answer as above, which we do. Okay, now let's take a look at sum. Now, as opposed to power, sum takes iterables only. So if I run this, you'll see that it's getting fed one single iterable, which consists of two elements, a 3 and a 2. So if I run this, it'll print out the correct answer. So sum takes an iterable, and the iterable consists of all the elements you want to sum. So essentially, sum is only taking in one input. Now if I try to feed it two different arguments, here I'm trying to feed it 3 and a 2, and it's not fit into a tuple, so this is actually two different arguments. Above, the 3 and 2 were fit into a tuple, so it's one single argument, but here they're two different arguments. So if I run this, you'll see that sum doesn't work. Int object is not iterable. So basically, it needs an iterable as its input argument or parameter. Now, because it only takes in a single argument, Starmap is not going to work, because Starmap, what it does is it takes the tuple and it breaks it apart into multiple elements. So if I run this, we'll get the same error. Int object is not iterable, because what the Starmap does, it will take the tuple and breaks it apart into its int subcomponents. Now on the other hand, as we've seen, map doesn't do that. Map will feed in the tuple as it is, so it should work with map. So if you run this with map, you'll see that it indeed works. Alright. Now let's take a look at min. Now min is a special case because it can take multiple arguments, or it could take a single argument. So if you take multiple arguments, as in min of 3 and 2, it'll return back 2. But you can also feed it in a tuple as a single argument, and here it'll take the min of the single iterable. So here we get 2 as well. So due to this special case of min, min can work with Starmap as well as map. And this is the same case as with max. Okay. So I just want to reiterate that Starmap will take tuples and break apart the tuples and feed them into a function. As opposed to map, it will take the item, and if the item is something like a tuple or a list, it will not break it apart and just feed it in as it is into the function. So that's the key difference, and that's the distinction as to when to use map and when to use Starmap. Alright, so hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, always leave them under the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.